on the line right now with the longest reigning NXT Tag Team Champions of all time, formerly known as the Ascension, Connor and Victor. How you guys doing today?
Good, man. Good. How you doing?
Not too bad. Just staying busy in quarantine.
Doing good considering the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you guys had a bit of a jump start on free agency. You guys left WWE in December. Your new names are Big Con and Vic or Victor?
It's just Vic.
Vic.
They stole
Okay.
Victor from me right as soon as I realized they hadn't copyrighted it yet. So
There you go. There's a win.
Yeah.
So you guys are planning to team together, or once we get going. So what are we going to call you guys since we can't use the Ascension anymore?
Well, we just got our new name basically. Thankfully enough, like we were going to use FKA at the time being, just because we liked that, and we just knew everybody knew us as the Ascension for the longest time. You know what I mean? So to jump off with something, we couldn't quite figure it out for a while, more or less.
Yeah, true.
I kind of
we were really going. We were thinking about it. Like we'd been talking back and forth so much and going back through all these other ideas. And then it kind of got presented to us the other week via interview. So, do you want to tell them?
Yeah, I mean, basically we came across the idea of being called the Awakening, and
cool.
I think with something with the Awakening, it's like the next step up from something from the Ascension, so it's still kind of got that connection for us, so the fans can understand what that means. And honestly, it's just something that Vic and I just, we truly think is badass regardless.
Yeah. It's like it really hit us. Like once we heard it, we were like, "Oh man, why didn't we think of that?"
I dig it. So there was a lot of different incarnations of the Ascension in NXT, especially, and Connor was in one of the first pairing. What was the original pitch for that? Because I remember seeing the promos, and it was very theatrical. It almost had this like dark arts sort of feel, and it changed over time where I feel like maybe some people didn't really get what they were doing because of how often it changed and how many different people you were paired with. So can you talk about what the original idea for that group was?
Originally, the whole idea was, I think I had gotten kicked off. Finally, voted off NXT season 5. And I came into practice the next day, and they had this picture, this idea with Ricardo Rodriguez as the head leader of this faction. And the idea was it was going to be called the Ascension. It was based off the 5 chakras and, whatever that whole theory was. And I didn't think it was going to click me personally, but especially when you saw the group, it just looked like a bunch of misfits thrown together, and I didn't understand what the hell I was looking at, to be honest with you. And I looked at, I think Bill DeMott was there, and I looked at Bill and I said, this is stupid. Like, how is this going to even work? It makes no sense, and it just was one of those things where as time went on, it kind of, took life of its own. Eventually Ricardo ended up leaving. Dream got a hold of it. It turned into this, I guess, like a vampire-esque True Blood type thing. And then kind of evolved from there into like the heavy metal version that Vic and I portrayed.
One thing that I don't know if was ever related, like you brought up the chakras, but like, are you guys familiar with Ascension Day and like that whole religious aspect of it? Was that ever part of it, or is that just...
No, that's just people thinking too hard.
Yeah. All of that stuff is like really coincidental, more or less, I would say. I used to laugh when we'd get, social media stuff of like Happy Ascension Day, and I was like, really? And I remember having to look into it, like, what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, this has nothing to do with what's
I had heard about it, but I mean, I really didn't know what it was until I was an adult. There was some kind of market near where I lived in New Jersey at the time, and the market like was closed for Ascension Day. And, like, that's literally how I found out, and it was right around that time. So I was like, oh, I wonder if
and we got all the heat for it, right?
Well, it's not like WWE ever had an Ascension Day, so that wasn't one of their special TV days ever. That's for sure.
That's funny.
So I think it was a period of like 2 years. It was, Connor, Kenneth Cameron, we know him as Bram or Tom Latimer now, Ricardo, Tito, Raquel Diaz. Like, did all those constant switches and the different incarnations in that short of a time ever hurt the chemistry with the group, or was it just more like, adjusting on the fly and, adapting to the role you were given?
Yeah, I think that for me specifically, that's what that was, because you didn't have a lot of say-so in all these changes that were going on, and you just kind of had to adapt. I think, Vic, Vic was there for this. I broke my back one year.
Yeah, I never seen it happen. So.
Yeah, I got laid up, and I was laid up for about 8 or 9 months. And when I came back, it was like the whole team was almost gone. I think it was just Tom holding the fort together. Yeah. But like Raquel was on her way out. I think Tito was already going up to the main roster.
Yeah, I think they pulled him up way before.
Yeah, we just had to adjust all the time. It was constant. It was just a constant adjustment. So you just never knew what to expect when this thing was going. It literally was its own machine.
Well, and even by the time we got paired together, you had been on your own for quite a bit at that point in time, because you had been going up and doing the weekend stuff and everything just by yourself for a bit. And I swore you were going up, like, just by yourself doing it. So
yeah,
it came as quite as a surprise for me by the time they were like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And we'd already had a couple shots at like me even trying. It had just never kind of come together until that point. So
during this time, it was also where NXT kind of went from reality show to full-fledged brand, developmental. Was that a weird period of time for you guys as well? Because it went from being like a competition, and even as fans, like, we didn't really know what NXT was. And then, you guys got picked to be on the show to build around. Like, did that play into any effect?
Well, for me, yeah, because I was going a whole different direction. I had originally had a meeting with Vince, way back when, about this whole rat gimmick. So I thought that was the direction I was going to end up going with my career, to be quite honest with you. And, as time went on, everything started evolving to what it became. So I don't, NXT, I hate thinking about NXT season 4 and 5 just because it just wasn't no fun. It really wasn't, because you never knew what to expect when you got there. You know what I mean? It was, you'd go there, you'd have these competitions. They wouldn't do nothing for you. To this day, I always swear that it was just for the boys to pop themselves. But, it was what it was. It gave me some TV time, some airtime. It gave me a platform specifically. And then, of course, you saw how the evolution of NXT and what it's turned into today. It's just much better today for sure.
Yeah, like even for me, like when I was right before I got signed, I can remember saying, like, I don't want to wind up on NXT. Because like at the time watching the show, I was just like, man, I see a bunch of guys I know can work their asses off and are better than a lot of other people. And this is the shits. Like, it just seemed dreadful to me. Like, and then too, hearing the stories from guys once I was signed, like even hearing, Connor's stories and like Daniel Bryan and like, Fred and all those guys, it just sounded awful. And so, by the time they switched it at that time, like, it was such a big change, and you could see that it was the change coming, because I think they had a different season of it planned at one point in time when we were all still in FCW, because I can remember after I first got there, I thought they were trying to kind of sort something out differently, to keep it kind of on that same level that it was already on. And then all of a sudden that happened, because like I can remember like that first day me and Con ever did anything, we were filming the like the entrance videos at Full Sail, like just like the opening cut of NXT basically. So like that, at that point to me, I was like, wow, NXT seems already like a better direction. Like it was definitely a relief to see them changing it and doing what they did with it. That's for sure.
Do you guys feel like it was coming from any one particular person? Because at least from a fan's perspective, like season 1 was, it was cool. People were kind of sour on ECW, and then by season 2 it was like you have all these talented people, but it just kind of became almost like a parody of itself. So by the time you get to season 4 and 5, it's like, okay, this is starting to get old. And then once again, like NXT is a fresh, a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly how it felt. You got to think NXT season 1, you got Nexus out of that, which was really cool, right? That was something we all never seen. Season 2, it was pretty cool. I think season 3 was at the Divas. I think they had to change it up a little bit, make it a little more fresh. But by the time season 4 and 5 came in, I think they had lost TV by that point. And it was just.
It was only shown in Canada at that point in time, I think.
Yeah, I think that's when they lost like the .com thing, and like it wasn't even on.
Yeah. And that's kind of, that's just kind of like, it just tells you something. Like that's just kind of the way that it was. So nobody wanted to see, that version of NXT, especially compared to the one that we get to watch today. Yeah. I mean, today it's just, it's off the chain compared to what it was. So it's neat to see that.
Yeah. I think there was so many changes kind of going on within the system at that time too, because like that's where the developmental system changed completely, like while we were both down there, and going from FCW to then moving to Orlando. Like by the time we got to Orlando in the Performance Center, like that was full blown NXT. And I know a lot of the people kind of behind that was like Hunter and like Dream had a lot to do with that stuff, and like Chris Chambers, who we were always working with. And like they just had such a good, kind of a better view, I think, of how to use the developmental system and how to make more out of it. Like the old system was old, so like what did they need to do? And it was pretty cool to be able to be part of, such a big change in that system.
When you guys finally got together, it was about 2 years after the Ascension started. This was arguably your most successful period. You guys were a day short of having a year-long tag team title reign.
Only by TV standards.
We got robbed, damn it.
We got robbed today.
I like records, so I feel you there.
Yeah.
You moved up to at the time, it was the main shows. How did you guys feel about that, going into it, coming off of a tag team title run like that? Like, were you excited for it? Like, how did your characters get tweaked? Like, because what you were on that version of NXT and how you debuted on Raw, right? Yeah. Yeah. How you debuted on Raw was, completely different. Like you were coming out, calling out, like the legendary teams, and it felt like, it was a weird transition for you guys.
I agreed. Do you want to go first on that one?
I got nothing good to say right now.
I don't really either. So I'll just give you the quick story behind all this, and Vic can attest to all of this. When first off, prior to we got the call, Dream was with us. Dream had been working with us. And it was really awesome. He had a lot to do with anything that was done, and Hunter as well. And I just remember vaguely one day Dream just complaining and being upset about some stuff that we really didn't understand. And it was kind of the deal of, he said, "You guys are going to be Egyptians." And we didn't understand what he was talking about. We really thought it's going to be Egyptian. You see that some people magazine, all the stuff going on with Egypt, and now you guys are going to be Egyptian. God damn it.
You're all Egyptians now. And so we're like, we don't understand. We're thinking we've been around Dream for 40 years at this point. I'm sure he wants to just get rid of us. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And so needless to say, we had our big sit down, our big meeting. We got the big call. and Dream was legitimately sitting to the left of me. And, you know, we've got Stanford, Connecticut on a big TV. We're sitting in the room. It's all, you know, dark and, you know, it's quiet. And they want to congratulate us on, you know, the big promotion and stuff like that, which is really cool, you know. And then they said, listen, creative has an idea for you two. And we're like, okay, cool. They go out, they bring the pieces of paper that they, you know, I guess they faxed in or whatever. They faced it down, and they said, basically, when you flip it over, this is what creative's looking for. We flipped it over, and then bam, there you go. And that's what you saw basically that debuted on Monday Night Raw. Now, the biggest thing I've always said in any interview I've ever done is the one thing you never do in this business is you never, ever insult the fans' intelligence. The second you do that, they're going to be pissed off. And I think that was where there was no connection, because they knew what they were getting, but then when they saw what they saw, they're like, I don't get it. And I think, you know, I just think sometimes, you know, it's just me. I'm very grateful for everything, but I also think sometimes creative isn't creative. That's just my opinion.
Well, too weird. That was such a stuck, how did I put it? There's such a big disconnect. I want to say maybe from the office or from somebody. I don't really know how it was, but it was like they didn't understand. And like, even at first, like, I don't think we understood. Like, I remember the first time we went to New York for a live event, and it was after one of the takeovers we had done. And they seemed like they didn't think the fans would know who we were, more or less. And I remember when we walked up outside of MSG, and there's, you know, all those fans out there, and they're all going crazy. Like, as we walked up, and me and him were looking at each other like, holy shit, like, this is nuts, you know? And it seemed like there was still a point where they just didn't realize, I think, how much our fans were already connected, like, through and through, like, within the whole WWE universe at the time, because they kind of seemed to like feel like they had to change everybody at that time a little bit coming up, and everything would get lost in the shuffle because the fans would be like, what, we don't get this, why are you changing what we already know, you know what I mean? So it wasn't a natural evolution, I don't think, for a lot of people.
Do you guys feel like, in a way, that, you know, you guys as a team were a few years behind, you know, like it was a few years behind its time? Or do you feel like it's more WWE or just wrestling in general didn't openly embrace like the internet and social media when they should have? Because it felt like, and I'll even say like Zack Ryder felt like the biggest example of that, where, you know, he did all that on his own, and it was like,
he's the reason WWE has YouTube channel.
It's like, more to your point, if they would have been paying attention to what people are saying online and going on social media early, like, there's so many different examples of, you know, what could have worked. Or I'll even say, like, I was a fan of the South Beach Boys, like that, and then Titus was in the Primetime Players. So all of these things coming up from NXT to the finished product, it's like, you know, it's night and day for some of them, and I can understand where the confusion was.
Yeah, it was still like the time we were there was, you know, we're not the only ones that were kind of victims of how disjointed things were. Yeah, like Neville's always the first one in my mind.
Remember, they wanted to make him like a superhero with a cape and all that stuff. And,
yeah, you know, he had an awful mask and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
I remember when he walked in and just, he was like, the look on his face, and we're like, hey, what's wrong? And he was like, just he didn't even want to like show anybody, you know. And it was
Neville
like,
loved wrestling, like he just loved it. And so to see somebody defeated like that, I mean, it's, you know, it's tough.
Yeah, really it was weird because like I think everybody in the company like easily said like, wow, they are so behind on so many things. Like, I can always admit being an old man, and like, in the sense of, I don't always want to jump on social media because I just don't like sharing my life out there. I don't always have something to say, and half the time if I do, somebody's going to take it the wrong way anyway. So like, but for me to be able to say back then, like, wow, they're so far behind, and, you know, granted they definitely changed, but it took them a long time to catch up.
Despite not really jumping headfirst into that. It sounds like you guys weren't too happy with it, but you guys did start on another win streak. It seemed promising for a while, and then this is maybe more of a case of tag team wrestling in the company in general, but it was a lot of 50-50 booking or silly stuff, and you guys kind of were waiting in the water until the whole thing with Stardust, the Cosmic Wasteland, started. Like, how did you approach that? Because I feel like that was pretty well received to start too.
Yeah, I know. I was excited when we were doing that, because we had already been working with Cody and Dustin quite a bit, and we enjoyed, working with them. Cody's quite the character, and his Stardust, it was something else. I know for us, like, it seemed like it all fit together really well. We were working with Neville and the Luchas and doing that. Like, we loved that stuff. I know personally I did, but everything in WWE is a struggle.
It looked like a comic book, like with the six of us, and it made it exciting. It looked good. It was different characters. Cody, with the Cosmic Wasteland, it looked really good visually. We worked on the entrance, and Neville with them looked incredible too. So, and of course we can all six go. So it just really, it was a payoff. I just wish they would have capitalized on it maybe just a little bit more.
I'll go ahead and say that and the WLC, like the Hornswoggle and 3MB stuff, like those are my two favorite examples to point out of where they did comedy right, because it's either somebody else is doing comedy, like you point to a Colt Cabana or like the indie stuff where what you're getting, or it's like you lean too hard into it. And I feel like you guys struck a good balance. You pointed out the comic book feel of it. I think Cody even, like, one of his outfits even looked like Sinestro the one time.
Yep. Yes.
So you had this like really cool thing going where it was almost back to your point where, not insulting the fans, like you knew what you were getting out of it. It was supposed to be comic booky, but it wasn't hokey. It was, and it was fun. And then you even had like Stephen Amell getting involved for a little while. Like, and it was like, okay, why not follow up on that? If it's being like, I don't understand why you pivot away from something that's being well received. Like that.
I don't even know if we have the answers to that one in that situation. I know we got left feeling kind of confused at the end of it. So I don't know if I think that was at the time too that kind of, if I'm not mistaken, pushed Cody to leave and do what he's doing now. Mm-hmm. So
there's a lot of money left on the table for sure with that. There's money left on the table.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like odd how there's so many things like it, WWE, you just have to fight. And sometimes they just, I don't know what the right term is. Like, it just kind of, stuff gets lost,
Or you just like kick a dead horse.
Yeah. Even if it's not dead, like it's not like we're the ones kicking the dead horse, but it is, you know what I mean? And it's not by performance, I would say, or ideas.
Yeah, sure.
So following up on the topic of comedy, where you feel like the Cosmic Wasteland is, striking that balance, then you guys get thrown into the Fashion Files where, it was really funny, but it's at the expense of your characters that you built all this stock in. So how did you guys approach, doing a complete polar opposite of what you were used to, where you guys are like the heavies, the big muscle guys, and then you're becoming like the baby face, like the punchlines like that?
It was so like, how do I put it? At first you just thought like, man, once we're involved in this, you guys won't be doing it anymore. I think that was one of the first things we said on like one of the, or like, it was so odd, but I think at the same time we were kind of so down and frustrated that it just like worked. We're like, fuck it. Like, what are they asking us to do? Like, and then we'd see what, Breezango was doing, and we're like, this is ridiculous. But if I'm sitting here laughing right now, like, can't really be that bad. And then we started having so much fun with it, but too, just seeing like the immediate crowd response was awesome. And like, we used to sit there and laugh because that was another one of the times that because of all that, it turned us babyface. And so even with like The Office, like they kind of like had to play catch up again because like they weren't really paying attention or they weren't really like listening. And even if you said like, hey, can you like pay attention to like the sound when this is happening? They'd be like, oh yeah. So like that one was another one where it was as fun as it was, like, and I know we loved it. I know some people, like even my friends were like, man, this makes you guys look dumb. And I'm like, really? Because I think it's pretty funny. And like, we're getting the best exposure and reaction that we're getting in a long time and we're enjoying it. I don't really feel you can go wrong with that. Like, if anything, it just showed people there's a whole other side. Like I think that was a natural evolution for us. Actually, when it happens, because like we were kind of like apprehensive about it because it seemed so silly, but the writers were so good at all of that, and everybody was having such a good time working with each other, and like all the ideas and everything that were coming out of it between like the talent, the writers, it just made it so much fun that it was. I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah, there was a lot of hands that didn't get involved in that, and I think that's what made it so good is that there was some creative freedom, and we got to all pitch ideas, and you saw what it became. And I think generally when you can see the wrestlers having fun, I think the fans start to have fun, and people feed off of that. And I think that's what was happening. It's like going back to what Vic said. At first, we looked at that thing and we're like, man, this is a sinking ship waiting to happen. Because I'm sorry, but when you're pouring syrup on a log and Vic's putting a wig on, you're just not sure like what's going on. But eventually you just start to roll with the punches, and it's like, man, you know what? We might have something here. This could be a lot of fun. And we all, like the four of us, like we all just started having, a little say-so in it. And we all just started clicking. And you saw what the product put out. It was just so much fun. And it was probably one of my favorite highlights I've had in my career because you get to see a different side of us. There was always that ass-kicking side of us, and all we did was, we were just serious all the time. And then you get to see us, pull that back, and you get to see a little humor in us. And I think that, I think that to me is what makes fans connect a little bit too, because there's, not everybody wants to go, love a badass.
Yeah.
So, and I really enjoyed it too, because from my understanding, Vince didn't understand it. So anytime all the boys were laughing and Vince's like, I don't get it. Like to me, that's just the fun of it all right there.
Yeah. We used to go sit behind the Titantron almost and like just kind of wait to like see like how do people react to this and stuff. And you'd hear the whole arena full of people like laugh at the right jokes, like, like it was like the live studio audience basically reacting exactly the way they're supposed to. And then afterwards you'd hear them like applaud, like they'd just seen theater or something. And we were always like,
Gorilla was popping
that's so crazy. Yeah.
Even the guys in Gorilla were loving it.
Yeah. It was funny to like be able to sit there and listen to that. Cause I know like we kind of all four of us would kind of sit around and like, then you'd see the writers sitting different places, like seeing who like they were watching, seeing who reacted to whatnot. And that was really exciting, I think, for all of us, because it was just such a different aspect of everything we've done.
Once again, it's like a missed opportunity. They failed to follow up. Like it really sounds like you guys enjoyed this so much. And then months of inactivity, and then you get released in December. So looking at it that way, like how prepared were you guys to leave the company at that point?
Pretty prepared.
We were totally prepared.
Well, I mean, like how far in advance were you kind of planning like the next step, or life on the indies, or potentially going to another company? Like how early did you have that idea where this probably isn't going to work out?
I think that clicked in us both pretty quick. Once we weren't traveling anymore or doing anything. So, you know, for me at least, I know it seemed both of us were at first were kind of like, what the fuck? And then we both just went, we're fine. You know, if anything, like we both, I know I did for sure. I needed the time away. I just gotten burnt out. Like, I mean, how long can you bang your head against the wall and then have somebody else start banging it for you and you're still, you know, not getting anywhere with it. So,
Yeah,
that was me.
Yeah, I think I tell people too, like, it was the toxic relationship at the end. You know, it just was what it was. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you sit back and you think, you know, are you grateful? Yeah, of course you're going to be grateful, because we wouldn't be having this conversation or this, you know, this interview if we didn't, you know, work for the company, right? That's just reality. So there are a lot of perks to it. But at the same time, it's just like, we're not stupid. You know, we knew that, you know, and I think to an extent they knew as well. And it was just one of those things. We're not ass kissers, and we're not going to kiss ass, never will kiss ass. So if there's, you know what I mean? So that's just, we're two grown ass men. So it's just one of those things where we know how it is, man. It's just one of those things where, hey, man, you know, you don't want to use us, then that's cool. Then just let us go on our way.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the reality of it all. I don't want to sit there and kiss no one's ass, and I know Vic doesn't either. And, you know, you just let bygones, be professionals, and, you know, and that's that.
I think your 90 days was up in February.
It was up like right once COVID hit.
Yeah, so really happened right, I mean, you guys were announced for Pancakes and Pile Driver at WrestleMania weekend, but you really only, I think you had one or two matches, like, in, you know, when you were able to, before COVID hit. So how does that affect you guys, like, mentally, and, you know, going forward? You have this idea of a plan for, you know, yourselves individually, as a team, professionally, and then this kind of happens where it's not a company's fault. It's this thing that's affecting everyone else. So, like, how did you guys adapt and deal with that? And
I think we did it like how everybody else would. You just kind of go with the punches, you know, like, ideally, like, we had a lot of dates set up. We had some overseas things that were going to happen. I know for a fact, like, had this not a hit, like, Vic and I would be on your tube right now. And I'm not going to say much about anything, but it just kind of was what it was. So, you know, you start thinking outside the box, you start taking advantage. One thing I will say that's been absolutely phenomenal about this thing, not that this isn't a great situation for anybody, but it's allowed Vic and I to come out and tell our story a little bit. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's been the nice thing about, you know, unfortunately, this place being on lockdown, is that we've got to think outside the box, and we've got to, you know, come out and do interviews and things like that. So, I don't know, Vic, you got anything else you want to cap off on that?
Like, I mean, I know, like, we were pissed at first, like everybody else, because we had just started rolling, like, after so much time down, so much time away. And we were super excited. All the stuff that we had done, even just those couple weeks, like, we were having so much fun being out there again and just seeing the way the landscape had changed. Because both of us had been, you know, within the WWE for 10 years. So we didn't, you know, it's not like you get out much, unfortunately, into the rest of the world of wrestling. But it was cool to be backstage and see different guys and just different attitudes, and, like, us being out traveling again. And, like, we got to spend a week traveling with Jimmy Hart. Like, you can't beat that. Like, my God. Yeah. So, like, so much fun. And then all of a sudden, like, all taken away again. And, like, things, you know, we had a couple really awesome things lined up, and it was like, oh, now everything's on hold for that. So, like, at first you got a little, like, angry, then you get nervous, and then, you know, now everything's pulling out, and luckily everything will still hopefully fall into place. Things are looking good now. Like, we've managed to do stuff like this. We've got a couple other things lined up, even outside wrestling. So, like, it's been a, you know, a shitty time for everybody, but, like, we're lucky at least that, you know, we're not, I don't know, in a worse off situation. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's how you have to look at it, whether, you're a wrestler or whatever kind of career you're in. But now that we're kind of getting back to normal, or the new normal, like, have you guys been able to resume talks and, try to plan out your future now that people are talking? You have AEW still running events, closed set. Impact is doing it in Nashville. New Japan just started this week. Like, are you able to kind of have those discussions now that you at least know? And I heard you mention, you might have already been on somebody's TV show, but is that something that's realistic now that you're seeing wrestling, whether it's with fans or not?
Very, yeah. So even just within the last 2 weeks, kind of like reconfirmed some things that we had going on that we're like super excited about doing. It just kind of all depends on the situation. Like, everything's kind of still kind of based on COVID, but at least we have dates coming up for next month. And it's just, like I said, like, at least all of that has kind of still kept going. So at that, like, it's, the answer to what you're saying is like, yes. So, cause it's perfect. Like what we wanted to do and, like what we're still lined up to do is something, that, like, it's very thankful. Like, I'm thankful that we got it, cause it's something that,
absolutely.
We both, like I said, we were both really looking forward to doing it. So
any of those dates you want to plug right now? Anything, like, are you guys back on? Okay.
No,
I don't want to shoot
we're
not shooting ourselves in the foot.
yeah. I always say I'm cursed. So, like, if I talk about it and it hasn't happened yet, like, oh, we're screwed. So
okay, fair enough.
You know what I mean? But you'll know when we walk out where we walk out.
Absolutely.
All right. I've speculated myself. I'll keep that to myself. But the reason I was asking is because I mentioned when we started talking, you guys were going to do 80s Wrestling Con, and I was like pretty excited about that. So, like, are you looking at conventions too, or are you just kind of playing it close to the vest and when we see you is when we see you?
I can't remember. He usually deals with some of those other stuff, so I can't remember. I know we got asked to do some of that stuff, and I can't remember if we solidified any dates for that. But it's not like we're saying no, because we didn't, like, man, those first couple we got to do, the ones out in New York and stuff, like, man, that was awesome. Like, that was just fun.
Did you guys do the big event? Was that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you at least got a little taste of it. That's one of the biggest ones around. That's not WrestleMania. And
yeah.
Now that you have had this time off and it's longer than you guys wanted, like, do you feel like you're gonna, change your characters at all a little bit or go back to basics? Like, what can people expect when we finally see you get back to it?
I would say probably the best version of us yet, because it's just going to be us. This isn't. This is just me and the big man. This is all us. Like, we were talking about it the other day. Like, there's nothing. There's not really somebody to answer to in this situation other than ourselves. And we're two guys that have both had a lot of, I think, super creative ideas and many aspects of what we do and inside and out of the ring for years that just hadn't, really been taken advantage of. That's probably the best of it. You're not going to see something crazy different, but you're probably going to see what you like anyway or dislike, however we want to present it to you.
I will get you out on this. I've been doing a feature called The Watch List, and when this whole thing started, people were worried, like, we're not going to have wrestling. What are we going to watch? Obviously, that's not the case, but are there any matches either one of you would recommend to people, whether it's from your own careers in WWE that, best represents you guys as a team, or any matches that you've watched recently that, really stood out to you and, maybe a singles or a tag team, that caught your eye? That I don't want to keep teasing it. I don't want to say who you want to work with but
just ask us.
I'm not trying to fish, but Are there any
Let's start
teams
with that.
that,
Who do we want to work with?
Well, the guys we want to work with are guys like the Briscoe brothers, or like
Rock and roll, baby.
Rock and Roll, and like
Rock and roll.
I like Tama and Tonga out in New Japan.
Yeah.
Like those are the teams like I've really liked. I like all the guys, really respect and want to work with. Especially with Rock and Roll. Like, they're still kicking anybody's ass. So
How do you not respect that, right?
I know, like I haven't gotten to watch a lot of like other stuff that's not really on TV or whatever. We met a good team that I was surprised at when I looked at their social media stuff when we were out in Outlaw Pro Wrestling there. So it was like Ringleader Midas and the Blazing Lion, I believe is.
Yep.
I can't remember what their tag team name is. Forgive me, but those were two young guys we met who I know when we talked to them, like they were super good kids, just great attitudes. And then I looked at their social and I was watching their stuff that they were doing. I'm like, these guys are actually really good. Like, they didn't seem like, watching their stuff, I was like, they were really polished and, they looked good and they got great attitudes. So that's the only one I can say that maybe if somebody hasn't heard of them yet, like they were someone I was going to start watching. That's for sure.
Mm. What about matches from your career? Any that really stand out, whether it was NXT stuff or the Cosmic Wasteland matches, like anything that you're really proud of from your tenure that you think fans should look back on?
Kenta Finn.
Yeah, that stuff always. I think that was kind of a given. I always remember our Falls Count Anywhere match with Tonga and
Huni, baby.
It was Hunico and Camacho at the time, but I know like that match was something that I felt like changed the course for us in NXT a lot at the time. So yeah, I always kind of go back to that one. That was one of my favorite. I know NXT matches that was on TV. I feel like I remember more of our live event matches with certain guys that will probably never see the light of day than anything else. I think that's kind of the same on the main roster. Like the Cosmic Wasteland matches were super cool. Road Dogg and Billy were a pretty awesome starter for us to begin with.
Yeah.
That's all I think.
Too Cool. When we got to work, Too Cool was great. I really think, I got to say, Kenta and Finn were probably the one that we did the most work with. That we were probably like that's something that I'm proud of that we did, because we went. How long did we go, Vic? 7 months with that program.
It was a while, because that was our whole last.
6.
It was our whole last while that we were there.
Live events and
we were doing so much stuff. Like I'll never forget working Kenta in Clearview, Florida, or something in front of like 50 people.
That's what the coconut loop or whatever they call it.
It's called the coconut loop now. Yeah, what's up with that?
That's what they named it after we left. It's funny. I passed something the other day that said coconut something or other, and that was all I could think of actually. Oh yeah, the old coconut loop.
Yeah.
So I know I can remember when we did the Access in Orlando, right? When we were there for that one, it was like a reunion with fans and kind of friends like that we'd known for years, like that we hadn't seen since we'd gone up to the main roster and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Florida's got a really great fan base. Like the people here, especially the ones that we always we're lucky enough to be able to take the time and get to know. Like those people still go to the shows these days. Like they still, tweet, they still message, they do all that because like it's part of how it is. I know when I was in Louisville, it was a lot of the same way there with OVW. Like people that love wrestling really love wrestling, and they want to get to know you and support you. So,
yeah, I think when I moved down there, that was like probably one of the most surprising things, that there was such a big fan base in Florida, because you never really heard of like an independent scene. At least, I'm coming from Pennsylvania and I lived in New Jersey and then moved down there for a few years. And it was like, it was kind of eye-opening, and it was a lot of fun to see because there's so much going on that wasn't on the radar until NXT kind of blew up, and then everything built off of that.
Well, it was quite the place back in the day, with like Dream and the Grams and all that kind of stuff. So it made sense to me. Like, it was just odd, I think, because people hadn't heard about it for a while.
Mm-hmm. Now known as The Awakening, we will hopefully be seeing you guys on TV sooner than later. Victor and Big Con, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you for having us and listening to our story, for sure.